Hello everyone and welcome back to another Photo Mishmash. I'm Christina.
And I'm Toby.
And this is episode 61.
Sony takes it to 11. Turned off previews. That's why it's black. It scares me. I've got PTSD. All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another Photo Mishmash. This is episode 61. And quick explanation for the title, for those who don't know. Sony takes it to 11. I think most of you know out there. That is in reference to that goofy movie, Spinal Tap, where they come up with the amps that usually stop at 10, but they we make these special, they go one more to 11. And then there's a whole funny dialogue that I can't quite recreate. I feel like Sony has just done that with their newly, just today announced Sony A7R Mark II. We'll be talking about that more. But let's make sure everybody knows what this show is about. It's not just about Sony taking it to 11. It's about the week's photo news, stories, discussions, Instagram challenges, all mishmashed together and presented to you right now. I'm Toby, photographer and educator.
And I'm Christina. I am a full-time wedding photographer.
And then what do we do after that? I don't remember. Feels like it's been a long time since last show, but it's only been a week.
It's only been a week.
It's only been a week. It's been a busy week. Usually we jump right into, in case you missed it.
Right, but we haven't been doing that. We've been talking about Instagram because we've been having some challenges on Instagram, and hopefully all of you guys have been participating.
Well, I think the participation has been excellent, and it always sounds a little cheesy when there are these contests and people say we had a hard time picking the winners. There are so many images in these. I think this was the most difficult for me yet, possibly because I couldn't push this all off on Christina since last week.
Yeah, it was the most difficult because you actually had to make a decision.
Yes.
Because the last 2 weeks you didn't.
Well, okay, it's true. But it would be easy if there were just a bunch of crappy images in one.
Oh, right.
Right. There's a lot of really good monochromatic images. So for the last week, you had the challenge of posting to Instagram a monochromatic image. And a lot of people went the black and white direction, which that's how I think I would tend. Yeah, as expected and how I would go too. And I ended up picking mostly black and white images.
That was expected too.
Who should go first? Or should we alternate? Oh, but I don't know if I have them in the order to alternate. I think you're going to go first.
Okay, sure.
With your winner. No? 1, 2, 3.
We would go
with your honorable mention. Let's try not to make it too confusing.
Okay.
And that is...
So...
Oh, this one?
All right. So, can you just go back and select... here. I will help you.
Oh, I need help.
Yeah. And, okay. So, for me, I guess in third place, I don't know. Let me go over to the screen that I can't see what's going on because the previews are...
Oh, it's not that previews, it's that I didn't turn that on. I knew we were forgetting something. Give me just a second to turn Desktop Presenter on. And it should be presenting now, so we can come back here. We're off to that. Bing, bang, start. Click on it.
Okay.
Okay.
So I like this one a lot because of all of the repetition and because it's an abstract image. It does follow the monochromatic rule, but I don't know, I really like how everything just sort of radiates out from the center. Like there's a central focal point and then all of the rest of the bubbles sort of radiate out from that, and it just has a very pleasing just feel to it. This was by Robert.
Yep. I think it's a fantastic image. I was so close to picking it as one of mine as well, but ultimately didn't. I'm glad you picked it. I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
All right, next.
Yep. That is my second one because it's in color and it's pretty monochromatic. So you've got just different shades and hues of blue. And this is by Evangelof. Or Lowell.
Lowell.
Yeah.
I don't know if we should try saying names.
So this image also...
Charleston Sky, sorry.
really cool. Just the colors are, I like the deep, well, I guess they're not really deep. They're just sort of like a, I don't know, sort of like a gunpowder, darkish type blue.
Midnight blue.
Something like that, yeah. Almost gray.
I'm trying to think of Crayola crayon colors. Yeah, this one pushes the boundaries as far as whether or not I would really call it monochromatic.
Really?
Yeah, I guess that it is really blue and white. So it feels like there's more though. But it's nice. I also like it very much.
Okay.
And now, this one?
The winner, yeah.
Wills.
So that, I just love the simplicity of it. I love the composition. I love the tones. It's just such a simple but beautiful image. Well done, Will. I really liked it. And then I picked one more, it's my honorable mention, which I actually really like that one. And I'm not sure, again, if it's, there's a filter that's been applied to it, or what makes this particular puddle and the area around it red, but I don't know, it just makes me really love, it almost looks like this tree, like the reflection itself is framed by what's around it. It's just a really nice sort of abstract image. Yeah.
I also like this one very much. I wonder if there's red paint underneath the puddle or something, like something
possibly
painted on the line. Go back to Will real quick, and it says, I graduate tomorrow. That was 6 days ago. So congratulations, Will, on graduating. Now, for mine, we're still on the screen? Okay, I don't know which one is... Okay, one of the honorable mentions, or runners-up, if you will, Dalabor's. These really close-up of this chrysanthemum petals. I love the repeating. I love the fact that it's monochromatic but natural. I just think this is a really nice image with a nice depth of field, and it speaks to me. And I also didn't want to pick only black and white. This was a very good one. Jaunties, or JT Shaps. Again, we've got, I think both of us have a lot of water in our images. You had puddles, you had Discovery Bay, and then you had the other one. This image is exceptionally crunchy, very, very contrasty, and it's, I think, a little trippy. It takes a minute for my brain to figure out what's happening here, and then I'm like, oh, it's something being thrown into a puddle, and it's the splash and the reflection of that. And I love that combination of things, and the fact that it's monochromatic.
So what I love about this particular picture is sort of how the light kind of highlights the edges of the water. It has a really cool effect. It sort of outlines the splash. I don't love the bottom area that's just pure white though. It's super distracting. It keeps coming back and bringing my eye back to it.
I'm okay with it because there's enough texture that it's just part of the sky, the curb, above the curb, or something there, and I like that. The other thing I want to point out, I don't always do this, but I'm curious how many followers different people have when I see likes, and JT got 173 likes on this, and if you click through to his profile, he only got 900 followers. So that is a very good ratio of likes, and I think it points to the fantasticness of the image.
Yeah, and also while we're at it, Will's image received, I think, 500.
Escalator, but he simply did a long exposure of it, which has completely wiped out the corners. You see hints of the little edges, and it's made it smooth.
Yeah, that's very cool.
I've never seen that. I'm sure it's not that uncommon, but I just liked it, and the contrast of that smoothness from the long exposure with these little points of light and these leading lines, I like it, and so I picked it as my one. I'm going to do a quick little blog post, and you know what we didn't? I have been reposting a winner on my Instagram each week. Now that we have two, I'll have to figure that out.
Maybe you can do a collage.
Maybe I can do a collage, yeah. So thank you everybody who participated so much. It's been fantastic. It's been a lot of fun to watch over the week as they come through and see different people's comments. Take a moment. I'd love for you all to go in through the tag and find the one that you think is the best, and leave a nice comment or a like, at least that double click.
Yep, and for next week's Instagram challenge, the theme is lines. So again, super lax rules. Just make sure you have a clear subject. use composition to your advantage, things like that. Those are some of the things that we're looking for when we look through the images. And if you want to interact with us and follow us on Instagram, our usernames are down below on the screen. And yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
That was a really good
That was
challenge.
good, and I think lines will be excellent as well. And that came from, I asked for suggestions from the PhotoRec support group. And who did that come from? That came from Pete. Pete suggested a bunch of things. Lines was the first one, and as I was reading these out and lines came up, Christina was like, that one. So we're going to go with that, and we've got some other
Thanks,
suggestions
Pete.
from people before. Thank you, and thanks to those people that are in the PhotoRec support group, because that means they are Patreon supporters. We'll talk more about that in a little bit.
Yeah, and just a reminder that while we do have these weekly Instagram challenges, we also have Raw Doctor submissions and photo critique submissions
Monthly.
as well.
Yep.
Yeah, monthly. And if you follow the address on the screen, I guess /Raw Doctor, is that right?
That's
yeah.
right.
So photorec.tv/Raw Doctor, you can submit images to either Raw Doctor so we can look at them and edit them and show you how we would sort of edit this image, which we are going to do later in this show. Yeah, if you want your photos critiqued by us, go ahead and submit as well using that
The
same
monthly
link.
assignments. It's all there.
And the monthly assignment this month is...
And this leads nicely into, in case you missed it, and this week, in case you missed it, was our monthly critique for May that was cropping. That was the assignment to get out there, and I love what you said during the critique. Do you want me to repeat that, or do you want to repeat it?
I don't remember it, so...
It was telling a broad story with a small piece of the image. That wasn't exactly what you said, but it was very close to it. And so we had that video go out this week, and it was the critique of those assignments where you were to crop your image, not after the fact, not in Lightroom, not in Photoshop, but when you go to take the photo, set up for your subject, and then get in closer and crop out parts that you wouldn't normally not include. And we had some great submissions, and it was a lot of fun to see those and go through those, so take some time to watch that. And as Christine was saying, the June, we're already several days into June now, a week into June, holy moly, is long exposure, 1 second or longer. That's where something like, well, no, I was going to get that neutral density slider filter thing that we'll talk about. Also, in case you missed it, it's always funny because now we do the show on Wednesdays. We end up talking a little bit about stuff that went out at the end of last week, and that was the high-speed flash photography overview of the MyOps, which you can now win, and a lot of balloon poppin'. And here's how it went down. I was making the overview of this, and I thought, you know, I've got this thing here. I've got all of the equipment. Let's go try to actually do it. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and it wasn't nearly as hard as I thought it was going to be. Yeah, it was a little messier than I thought it was going to be. And Splash, the bucket I had underneath to catch the balloon splashes, was not always adequate. But that's okay. That's why I was in the basement. And this is one of the things that I think is really cool about photography, is just how incredibly, and this is no genius statement I'm making here, but just how incredibly varied it can be. From one moment being down in your basement, capturing that split millisecond at which a water balloon pops and the water is still in the same shape of the balloon, to going out and photographing a waterfall for 30 seconds or making a powerful portrait that impacts people all over the world. It's a neat thing to be part of, and so it's exciting. And this is a neat little device. I've had a lot of questions about it, a lot of questions about Trigger Trap, because I've been a big fan of those guys for a long time, and I still am. And if you just want to do time lapses, Trigger Trap is a better deal. Also, I mentioned that I was, as I was starting to put together the stuff last week, that I was having trouble with a Trigger Trap doing the same thing, because it can also do high-speed flash. And people pointed out to me that I had forgotten that Android, that I was using it with, sensor-wise, Trigger Trap and Android don't necessarily talk to each other so well. Sound okay?
I hear that there's a little bit of hiss in the background. That might just be from the machine, so sorry guys.
Okay. We're also powering the camera, so that might be bringing in a little extra noise as well, powering it from a plug. So if you use Trigger Trap with an iOS device, you should have much better luck with the sensors. And Scott, who I used some of his images, he had actually done some of these high-speed stuff with Trigger Trap. So, but still, it's a neat little device, and the DIY scenario set up in here for all kinds of stuff, plus the lightning also looks good. Which reminds me, Craig had said a while ago that he had used Magic Lantern to capture lightning using its sound sensor. And we were kind of like, well, the thunder comes after the lightning. He said he was mistaken. He meant to say he used motion detect. He used the motion detect of the Magic Lantern software to capture lightning. I did not realize that it was fast enough to do that. That's pretty interesting. And also in some Magic Lantern versions, T5i, and earlier, you can do sound trigger. And people were asking, actually just one person, I don't remember who now, would it be fast enough to capture it? And I don't know. I'll have to try, or somebody will have to try and let us know. Remember how there's that module in the T5i sensor that you can clap to make it take a picture? The question is, could you use that to capture balloon popping like we were doing? And then firing the flash on there. Your timing is going to be a little bit trickier, but it's possible. So I'd like to hear from folks out there if it's possible.
So what are maybe like two quick tips that you could give people for high-speed photography, and then encourage them, hopefully this will encourage them to go watch the video?
Well, the first is being able to really cut out all of the ambient light. It's funny that so often we are always searching for ways to get more light into the camera to avoid, but in this case, you want to cut out all of that light. And then two, I was trying to be a little bit fancier and using two flashes, but really you also get this little flash cord with it, and it just plugs right into the little PC port on your flash, and it's a little port that you didn't even know. Even the cheap ones have it. No, not there, right here. And it's very simple. I was using the new Yongnuo 600 just because I wanted to test that. Worked very well. But even something as cheap as the old 430 EX2 has it. They all have it. It's hard to find one that didn't have it.
You push stuff out of the way so it doesn't look all messy.
Yeah, I'll keep things clean for you. All right. So.
And that.
Okay.
Okay, so
go enter giveaway, and you get 2 bonus points for liking the MyOps Triggers Instagram website. So take advantage of that.
But there are 2 giveaways happening.
There are 2 giveaways. It's a little messy, I know, but you know what? When people are willing to give stuff away through you, you say, okie dokie, let's do it, folks. So, although the 50 is my own little thing. 50mm STM lens. So if you're a Canon shooter, full frame, crop, doesn't matter. Make sure you've entered that giveaway. That's it. 2 giveaways. MyOps, that's a $200 device, or $125 little Canon. I'll ship them anywhere in the world as long as it's allowed. And the MyOps folks will ship anywhere in the world too. It's nice. I always like to be able to offer the worldwide contest. It doesn't always work because sometimes shipping is ridiculous outside the US, but you know what? We can do it this time.
Great.
All right. I think that's all in case you missed it. And we sometimes talk about what's coming up. One is a review of that fantastic, so fantastic I'm blanking on it. It is the Faisal tripod. That is really nice.
Yeah.
And I'll only partially blame it for my phone taking a swim.
So let's move on to news now. We have quite a number of news articles to get through.
We're going to just touch on some of them here, and let me close some tabs while we start to talk about this. First one was the world's first professional flash trigger for iPhones. Now, I saw this headline and I thought, oh, this is some other fancy flash thing for smartphones. There's tons of them, all kinds of little LED things that are designed to get you better light, to better pictures. It's all about the light. But no, this is a step fancier. This is actually a trigger and you should be able to tell that from the title, that is going to talk to a standard flash. And they actually even have, they have a Yongnuo 568 EX2, but it can talk to any of these flashes because you're going to set it into a little receiver. So that is pretty neat that they have been able to figure out how to communicate to a flash while the phone camera, use them interchangeably, is taking a picture. Now, the one big drawback here so far is the top sync speed, as they say, is 1/30th of a second. In fact, I should say that's the only sync speed. Your shutter speed must be 1/30th of a second on the iPhone. Which actually, as I'm saying that, that's a little strange. You don't really control your shutter speed. So the phone, do you? Even the apps on the iPhone that offer manual shutter speed control, they're not really manual shutter speed control, are they? We've talked about this recently. We need to do some experimenting. Can you really say, I want to take a picture with the iPhone at 1/60th of a second? Or 1/120th of a second? Or 1 full second so people can enter the next monthly challenge?
What do you think is controlling the exposure then, if it's not the shutter speed?
Oh, well, I do think it is, but I thought that it was not, I didn't think it was settable by the person. I thought it was internal only. No?
On the iPhone?
Yeah.
Well, if you have the manual camera app, you can do it.
I thought we had talked and you had said no, it didn't really let you do that.
No, it does.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't let you change aperture, but
Right.
it lets you change ISO and shutter speed.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So, still, when you want to use this, limited to 1/30th of a second, and that's fairly limiting. But just the fact that they have figured out, because again, one of the other things that was interesting to me as I was putting together this whole high-speed flash photography little overview is just, the differences in the speed at which the flash fires and that communication period and how it all happens seamlessly, rapidly, and reliably most of the time. And so they, figured out the different communication speeds within the device, the iPhone, and then set up the trigger that way, and so it's neat. So, will you be backing this? It is a Kickstarter.
No.
They're looking for money, and I think it's $75 will get you the first device.
Yeah.
They got a long road ahead of them. It feels to me like, well, here they go. They got about 10% of their goal. They want 28,000. They've got 2,900. They got 39 backers. They're at the beginning though. $75 will get you the trick for iPhone. Why can't they do Android too? I bet it's very difficult to create something that is going to work across devices. And the flashes are manual only so far. So definitely some limits. Go and get some investors to help them develop this a little bit further, then say we're ready to mass produce this. It's going to work at more than just 1/30th of a second to be more useful. Even models in a studio, that's a little too, well, with an iPhone you can shoot at those slower shutter speeds and not see blur too often. It's a little slow.
Okay.
Slow.
Can you talk about the next news story, because I didn't actually look at that link?
Well, it's interesting that DJI, which also the DJI 3 is available today, this is not that, is a drone built for developer, or they've come out with this DJI Matrix 100. It is an open platform. It really is designed for developers to test software on, because there's all kinds of things that people want to do with drones, not just fly them around taking pretty pictures. And we've seen some new drones kind of coming and trying to fill all of these different niches, like the ones that will follow you and the ones that will go from point to point to point, although DJIs do that. So it's pretty interesting. And this is just made for programmers. A little bit harder to crash, more reliance on sensors, less on GPS. So it should be able to see a little bit more of the world around it, including trees and things like that. Interesting.
Yep.
That's all. Just want to mention that.
Fresco News app turns to crowdsourcing for photos.
Yeah, you want to talk a little bit about this? Or do you want me to?
No, why don't you talk about
Okay.
that? I sort of read the second half of the stories.
Do you have an iPhone? you could soon be reporting for news organizations worldwide. So I can't remember if this, the Fresco app did it first, but they have kind of pivoted, as they say in the business.
What is the Fresco app?
Well, it is now. Here's what it is now. I can't tell you what it was, but what it is now is an app that's going to be on people's phones. When something, an event happens, a car accident is an example here, or you know, like, I don't know, let's say a parade or something. News places are going to be able to open up their back end of this app and say, oh, we've got 10 people in the area with this app installed. Let's ping them and say, go get us a picture or go get us video of this event.
And they get paid for it.
That's a good question. I think, oh yeah, photos will earn at least $10 and videos will earn at least $40.
That's interesting. It's definitely changing the dynamic of just how media outlets use photography and film.
Right. Well, I mean, we've been hearing, you know, there have been some news organizations, smaller newspapers and larger ones, making headlines with laying off their photography staff, relying more on reporters with iPhones. Here's the next logical step. These aren't even reporters; these are just people. But it is amazing. It makes me think of a book I read many years ago, David Brin. It's called Earth. It's a science fiction book. I loved it. I think about it fairly often, and it was written, I think, in the late 80s, and it predicted a lot of technology that we have now. And one is that basically all people are reporters. They have little headset goggles with cameras and things of that sort. And this is very similar. You know, and think about the speed. Let's say, you know, an accident happens 30 miles from downtown or 30 miles from wherever your reporters are, but you've got somebody with this app installed a block away. Ping them and say, can you go do this?
So I guess some of the limitations of the system to me seem like there's not a ton of curation. So it's all about instantaneous reporting, which is great. But at the same time, couldn't you very easily, and this is not to be cynical or anything, but I'm just saying that one of the nice things about news, and especially reputable news sources, is that they take the time to select their photographers who operate within a certain code of rules. So if civilians and anybody's just going to be reporting, not that reporters aren't civilians, but if anybody's going to have access to this and is going to be able to just report, then doesn't it sort of open up a window for people to sort of alter images and you know, I feel like it's less reliable that way, the content that we get from them.
Right. I hope there's still an editor on the back end saying, and this is where the system has failed in the past, and will probably fail again in the future, but an editor saying, yes, you know, this is a picture that happened at this event that we're saying it actually did and represents what's happening there. Because it also, we could go down a deep discussion hole fairly quickly about how people can, you know, again, we've talked about journalistic ethics. These are not people with journalistic ethics. These are somebody who installed an app and now said, a little thing says, you'll get $10 if you run to the corner and take a picture. You know, let's say it's one of those riots, like that, you know, that have been happening in the news lately. And depending on the angle they take a picture of or what they intend to exclude or include can really change the feel of the picture. What I hope is that, one, we've got editors, as I'm saying, and two, crowds more than that one person. We've got 5 people, all with, you know, various agendas. And so through that, we get a greater picture of the whole story.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And you know, I'm kind of bashing these non-reporters, but in the recent Baltimore riots, we heard about reporters really choosing what they were taking pictures of to be more sensational and maybe painting a picture that wasn't true of the area.
That's true.
I see people in the chat asking about Android app. I don't see any mention of Android app at this time. And what was the other thing? There is another app called Capture, I guess, which is somewhat similar, and they're also talking about a lot of people using Twitter, and there's the CNN iReport as well, which has been around for a while, and that's not really app and photo, but that's somebody making video. We've got our friend Caleb right here in Brattleboro that every time there's a snowstorm, Caleb Clark on report for snowstorm.
Or the strolling of the heifers.
Or the strolling of the heifers. It's neat, you know. I mean, we don't really care because we're there, we're living through it. But for somebody who...
They get to experience sort of
Yeah.
Brattleboro life, New England.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so,
All right.
I don't know. It's kind of a we'll see what...
How many of you out there would, if you installed this app... Oh, and I also saw somebody in chat mention, sorry, names are going by quickly, you know, that... How do you feel about somebody getting paid just $10 for a photo?
Well, if they're willing to do it, I mean, you know,
Right.
I think it can be kind of like stock photography in the sense that, like, okay, well, I want to be a photojournalist, so I'm going to, like, you know, pay attention to this app. Anytime there's a new story, I'm going to be out there. It's kind of like freelance. It's like a job board almost, you know? And obviously, you've got a lot more competition, but there's conceivably the possibility, especially in an area like where we live, where there aren't a ton of people who are doing photography professionally, to make somewhat of an income, you know? Mm-hmm. And it probably would save newspapers money. People would be out of a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, yeah. Anyway, moving on.
Okay.
Black's Photography, which was, I think, a camera store, based on the article, that I had never heard of before, but it sounds good. I mean, it's not
I'm glad
good.
you're able to piece that together.
It sounds like...
Sounds like Canadian. This is for our friends over the northern border.
Is it Canadian?
Yes.
Oh,
I've
see.
never heard of this store.
Oh, okay.
But when I read the article, it talked about
But it's
Canada.
a big store, so
It was
that's
a
why I said that apparently it's a store, because
Right.
I'd never heard of it before. But it sounds like a big store, so
Right.
I kind of felt like, what?
Yeah.
But so it's closing down, which is just, you know, another one on the list of all of the ones that have closed,
Ritz
at least here in
Wolf, right.
in the States, because there's just no room for that really. And you know, like I used to work at a camera store not too long ago in a town near us, and you know, the majority of people that went in weren't really buying gear. They were like maybe buying camera bags, maybe buying some frames, maybe buying like developing film, scanning. I think actually that's a pretty big business, is having your old pictures scanned and digitized, or bigger than like trying. So that, I mean, retail brick and mortar shops just have, I feel, no chance. I mean, you can argue that there's, you know, the customer service and the personal sort of sales experience, but no. I mean, most of the time they don't have what you need. You know, you want to go in and look at something.
Yes,
they don't have it.
true.
They have to special order it for you. You can special order it for yourself at Amazon or B&H.
Returns are so ridiculously easy with Amazon, B&H.
It's disappointing.
I was going to say, I think camera bags, and I mean, cameras to some degree too, but camera bags are one of those things where it's nice. I've gone before. I've taken a couple pieces of my gear and gone to the store and like shoved them in there and see if I like it or not. But it's true, very rarely do they have the selection or the bag you're actually looking for.
Yeah.
And you know, what I would say these days is order a couple of different, let's say camera bags in that example, order a couple of them, try them out, send the ones back that you don't keep. But one place that camera stores, brick and mortar, smaller camera stores can still, I think, really help is through teaching and holding classes and, you know, hands-on stuff. And providing that nice customer service, because it's clear there's a need based on the number of people that watch me and that write into me, which is now over 100,000. That's awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight and for watching this after the fact. It's pretty awesome. And so there is that need, which just reminds me of our friend Bryant, who I had as an interview in videography quite a while ago. He went into a computer store in a small town, and the guy was incredibly rude. And it's just like, you know what? I mean, you guys are already struggling. Don't you see that? So one thing that you can really offer above and beyond these big, giant stores that ship stuff to you instantly is customer service. And if you're not providing that, fart on you. We had WWDC Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference on Monday. I followed all of it along as like the nerd I am. And the one piece of advice, or one piece of information that came out of that I think is interesting to all of us is that the new, I guess, graphics engine is what they're going to call it, Metal, it's this framework, that should greatly improve Adobe's CC performance. So, that's good.
Yeah.
I think it's coming in the fall.
I don't know. I mean, Adobe said that this new Lightroom was going to improve performance, and yet, as far as I can tell, it's kind of slowed it down a little bit in some situations.
Did you uncheck the graphics thing like I
have not.
Okay.
I should.
You need to do that.
Yeah.
It's clear now, based on, I think it was Roy who I first saw posted this, but there is a lot of inconsistencies and incompatibilities with graphics cards. And if you have used your graphics card checked, it might be running into those and actually slowing down a little. I didn't really notice any big differences until I started getting deep into brush editing. And then I really saw, I'd paint, and then I would see my effect like 2 seconds later. That's ridiculous. Turn that off, and I'd say it's back to the way it was pre-6.
When is El Capitan supposed to be coming out?
El Capitan is coming, I think the fall. Sometime in the fall. Yep, and I believe it'll be free. 8x improvement in rendering for After Effects. Don't know how that's going to translate to Photoshop and Lightroom, but it should be an improvement nonetheless. That's exciting. We don't want to get down this. We talked about it a little bit in the car about whether Apple is over the... Because
have they peaked?
Yeah, the music.
What do you guys think?
I know this is off topic, but music, that feels... Jimmy Iovine stood up there on the stage and was like, "What you guys want?" I'm sorry, I'm doing a bad New York accent. "What you guys want?" He's New York. Jimmy Iovine.
Oh,
not
Jimmy
the British guy.
Oh, not Johnny Ive.
Not Johnny Ives. I can't even begin to do a British accent.
Okay.
It's like, "You guys want radio station 24 hours a day. Do we? Is that what we want? A radio station?" All right, all of you 4K haters out there, you can double suck it, because YouTube now supports, well, actually they've said they have for a while.
They support.
That they have an 8K video that you can watch. I put it in quotes because we both tried to watch it and it just freezes.
Nope. You can try it though. The article is on Petapixel. You're going to open it and we can show people what it is.
Really, it's a YouTube video that you can.
Well, we're not going to play the video.
Okay.
But they can.
You should go watch the video. And it's pretty interesting how he made it. I believe he did 2 Red Epic cameras side by side and then stitched that video together, if I understand this correctly. That's a little mind-blowing about the time and energy that it took to do that. But it is a nicely shot ghost town. And I watched it in 4K on a monitor that's not 4K because pointless. Let's move on.
Okay.
I mean, there are a lot of people, I think for a while, I don't hear this so much anymore, but a lot of people are like, 4K, schmork, nobody's got TVs that support it. Well, a lot of people do now, and YouTube supported it for a while, and it is the inevitable march of increasing K.
People on the chat want your British accent.
I don't even want to begin. Stick around for all right, live folks, if you stay tuned for that after show.
It's just an after show. It's not an after
I don't even want to use that as a tease though, because it's just bad. Not even like funny bad, just like cringeworthy, I think. I don't even know. It's been a long time since I've tried.
Right. Well, you've been dared. You have to do it now. People are going to stick around.
I got to get Scott and Roy have nicely put a lot of these news articles in our rundown, and I need to get them the names to. I want you to put your little initials next to it to know who was most interested in this, because it's interesting to me. I think this is Scott, because Scott recently bought a Fuji X. What did he buy? The XE1, I believe. And this is about Zeiss saying their Tout lenses.
It's not tweet.
I don't know. T-O-U-I-T.
French.
Tweet. Oh.
French speakers in the.
This is going down.
It's getting really silly.
They made some really nice lenses for the Fuji X system, but Fuji also made some really nice lenses. So it was kind of like they're not selling so well. They are saying no more lenses in 2015, probably no more lenses in 2016. All right. These are just the nice Zeiss lenses for the Fuji system. That's about all there is to say about them. other than, Fuji's got a nice selection of lenses. And these are not those cool, I think they were the Batiste lenses that had the OLED focus indicators. I want those. Just
because they're cool.
Yeah, I don't want to actually spend the money on them, but I want those.
All right, more Zeiss news. Zeiss has, they've come out with this virtual reality headset, so like these goggles that you put on your face, you slide your phone into them, and you can play certain apps that give you a virtual reality experience, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. It's clear that a lot of these companies think VR is the next big thing. We've got Lytro cameras ditching basically their camera line, saying we're going to video and we're going to video VR. That's the direction they're going. We've got Zeiss doing this. We've got Google doing this. We've got Facebook with the Oculus, right? As Facebook bought the Oculus. We've got Samsung with their Gear VR. And we've got Google with their Cardboard.
Well, let's talk about some of the applications. The first thing that comes to mind is the gaming industry. I mean...
Yes. So I think we shouldn't talk about this too long, other than it's interesting that here we have a clear optics leader jumping in as well, with basically a plastic headset that you slide your phone in. That's the same as Google's Cardboard. For those who don't know, Google Cardboard is that thing they gave away at last year's Google I/O, a piece of cardboard that you fold and slot A into B, stick it on your head, and then slide your phone into there. I want one. I need to buy one on eBay.
That name though, why is it called Cardboard?
Because it's cardboard. It was somebody's 20% project that Google does, and I don't know. It's kind of neat. I like the cardboard.
I don't.
So the first application I thought of for photography would be neat to be able to, for learning purposes, walk into a situation where you could visualize your depth of field.
That would be really cool.
Like from multiple angles too. Like you can walk into the fuzziness or out of it.
Or for teaching. Like if you don't have to be in an in-person class with somebody, just put on goggles and this person talks, and then every time that they're shooting, you can see exactly what they see behind, when they put their camera up to the eye, and see kind of how they compose, how they work from I mean, I think that's one of the things that are really difficult to teach when you're teaching photography. It's sort of like telling people, all right, well, I started here and this is where I ended up, because I just didn't, I feel like it's really difficult to sort of put that into words, and it would be nice to be able to sort of see it, but I guess that's something that can happen without virtual reality goggles. You could just stream video of it if you had the resources.
Yeah. Trevor says, I remember people going gaga over 3D TVs, which definitely, yeah.
Yep.
So will this VR
I feel like I called that. I was like, nope.
You did.
Not going to happen.
Probably, you know what? Probably like Samsung and Sony, they saw your post about that and they're like, we should just stop, Christina says.
I'm a visionary.
You're so visionary. Well, I mean, you are. The other just random comment from the chat room was, it's gone by 2 by. I think it was Jeffrey says his local camera store has a really nice Zeiss lens sitting in the window in direct sunlight.
Oh, that's just sad.
And Jesse wonders if that law about breaking car windows to save dogs applies to the stores in the Otis as well.
That was funny.
That was funny. I like it.
That's
I think so.
funny.
In the name of all things holy, I need to rescue this lens. So yeah, I don't know. I think I've heard Facebook's vision, this is going a little off topic, a little more tech, but I like to do that from time to time. Facebook's vision is all of us sitting in a room with VR on, and then that means we are virtually sitting in a room with all those people that we're interacting with on Facebook. It actually makes me shudder a little bit because, I don't know. You weren't listening?
Nope.
Okay, let's move on. And...
Talk about gear acquisition syndrome. 600 vintage cameras for $34,900.
It's a lot of Zeiss. A lot, as in not a lot, but a lot.
I'd be curious to find out if somebody is going to buy that.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of cameras.
You could open up a little museum.
I guess so.
We've got some collections of
camera
Zeiss,
museum.
Icons, Nikons, Leicas, Canons, Rolleis, Kodaks. Okay.
Okay. In the same vein, how about a $350,000 Leica camera rifle?
Prototype.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just show people and say, here it is. And there we go. When's it from? Does it say when it's from?
It does not, I don't believe.
1937 to 39. Huh. Very interesting. They do make, for those who don't know, they do make rifle stock holders and balancers for some telephoto systems. There are some people who still photograph using kind of rifle butts like this. Now, you know what we didn't put in the rundown, but let's move into a quick word of thanks to our sponsors. Those people out there, those nice people who have said, we're going to give Toby and Christina some sum of money each month. And in return, they get value. They get access to Lightroom videos, to our support group or Lightroom support group. They get personal critiques on images by me. They get listings on the gallery page. If you're a $10 person, make sure you've emailed me that. I need to update that. And it is both, it's this free-flowing, wonderful thing. And that Patreon money has helped us in a lot of different ways. And it's been fantastic, and we appreciate those folks. And if you're not a supporter, think about supporting. Just $3 a month gets you access to all of those Lightroom videos, but we have started to update for Lightroom 6 content, and we will be continuing to update, and it'll just be available to you.
And if you would like to find other ways that you can support us that are not Patreon or through Patreon, you can follow the link on the screen, photorec.tv/support. Yep, and that is it for our brief sponsor for today. Okay, so what's next?
So next I want to talk briefly about the reference of the title, Sony turns it to 11, or takes it to 11 is what I said. Or the other thing I said on Facebook is, I feel like Sony just took the mic and dropped it. Because this Sony a7R Mark II, let's do a quick recap. The Sony a7R last year, is it last year or is it a little bit over a year ago now? 36 megapixels. We were talking about it earlier. We both really enjoyed that camera when we had it in here for review. You know, it was a little on the slow side, but it created some gorgeous 36 megapixel images with that lovely Sony dynamic range that we're starting to get used to from these cameras. And it's very nice. And they have now come back with the update to that. It will be available in August. You can pre-order it in a couple of weeks or a week or so. Here are the highlights. 42 megapixel full frame sensor. Now you might be saying, well, 42 megapixels, we got Canon over here that's already stepped it up to what, 52.6 I think. And we have, yes, so we've got more from the Canon side, but this is backside illuminated. This is the first time it's been done in full frame to my knowledge. And I don't want to go into the details of what this is because I'll make myself sound stupid, but it is basically a different way that the sensor is combined, which makes it a much more efficient sensor, which should give you even cleaner high ISO images. The Samsung NX1 crop sensor is backside aluminum. That's one of the other bigger.
Backside illuminated?
Backside illuminated, thank you.
Toby's breaking news with brand new metal sensor technology.
Illuminati. And that sensor is tops in the crop world. Or it's right up there now. I think the D7200 and it are so close. This means that this seriously massive megapixel camera is going to offer great dynamic range, great low light performance.
Can it get any better?
Yes,
it can get better.
I feel like, now, well, hold on here. We're only going on specs, but there is certainly room for this camera to have a misstep or two that makes it less perfect. But right now, based on these specs, based on the other Sony cameras I've handled, this sounds dreamy. It can get better. Do you know why, Christina?
Why is that, Toby?
Because they did put 5-axis in-body image stabilization in this sucker. So same as the Sony A7 Mark II that we took with us on the Seattle trip and really enjoyed, liked it. Ask me if it can get better.
Can it get even better than that?
It can get better than that, Christina. Do you know why?
Why is that?
You talk about me being cheesy. 4K in-body video. So this, I have to say, Sony A7S users are like,
I need some
hold on.
big memory cards.
Well, that's the other thing. They shoot to that XAVCS codec, which is pretty efficient. But yes, you will need some bigger memory cards. 399 phase detection points and 5 frames per second burst rate. That 4K comes with the S-Video and S-Log2 Gamma, so that's the really high professional kind of like profiles that are meant for grading, give you a nice, amazing, the highest resolution EVF to date, although it doesn't sound, 2.36 million.
In the chat says that it will be missing an fully articulating screen and touch capabilities, which actually is kind of a bummer. I like articulating screens.
It is articulating. It's just not fully articulating. It doesn't flip out to the side.
Right, it just does
the rotating this way and this way.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that. I tell you, I mean, yeah, there is a couple times where that bothers me, but as long as I can have the camera down at waist level and have the screen up enough so that I can basically see, I'm fine.
Right, and I think that all the other features make it sound just...
Silent shutter mode. The Sony A7R did not have, I remember, right? The A7R did not. It had a fairly loud shutter, and there's actually some internet hubbub about the loud shutter mechanism causing some mirror slap, or not actually mirror slap because it doesn't have a mirror, causing some vibrations that were negatively impacting these beautiful images. So they've said all of that's fixed. You can also do silent shutter. Woo! Yeah.
Well, I can't wait till we get that in.
So not cheap. But again, that's going to be cheaper than the 5D Mark IV, as people over on Facebook were saying.
You think so? It's going to be cheaper than the 5D Mark IV?
Oh yeah, the 5D Mark IV is going to come in at least at $34.99.
Well, I thought that was the 5DS.
Okay. No, that's what the 5D Mark III came in at, $34.99.
Yeah, I guess so.
You think they'll beat that? I don't know.
I don't know.
They won't.
Well, so
Canon.
I was at it wasn't a show. It was a mixer and there were other wedding photographers there, and one of them he was saying that he's starting to shoot with the A7 weddings. So I could conceivably see myself trying this out for real.
Yeah, much faster focusing system.
Yeah.
We also we're pleased with the A7 Mark II focusing system. We thought that was fine. I have heard from other photographers, some shooting in weddings, that are using these systems. Low light on the dance floor still scares me. But you know, even our 5D Mark III struggle at sometimes during that. So that's a little scary. But other than that, you know, this sounds tempting. Extra batteries you're going to need. Lens system, we've got a good selection from Sony now, and more are coming. I think early 2016 we're going to get another 8 or so of these lenses. So a lot of options. And the fact that, let's see, so downsides. Trying to think of downsides. Battery life is not going to be great, especially running in-body image stabilization, especially shooting 4K video. Those things combined are going to be interesting. And, you know, if we're talking about, I feel like I kind of poo-pooed the Sony A7 line when I said for travel. Because you need full-frame lenses. Not very quickly. You need full-frame lenses. And the kit lens it comes with is kind of light and cheap, but decent enough. But if you want to really, especially with the 42 megapixel sensor now, you're going to want those nice lenses. So they're going to be heavier. So for travel, I think, you know, you're still going to debate whether or not this system is good for you. But gosh, the idea of going to Iceland with this thing, making shots in Iceland.
Oh my God.
With this camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to just back up for a second, well, I just say that, you know, when I put the 36 megapixel images side by side with the 24 megapixel from what does the 5D Mark III have? 20? I can't remember.
21.
21. The difference in resolution and detail was not dramatic. It was noticeable but not dramatic. Dynamic range, that was dramatic. So, and that's not all that Sony announced today. Let's just briefly say that the RX10 Mark II, this is their kind of super zoom version of, hey, where's the little, wasn't there a little camera here? What'd you do? Oh.
What did I do?
What'd you do with my camera? Well, actually, let's go backwards. Let's say the Sony RX100 Mark IV. This is the Mark III. It's a nice little camera. It's been part of this kind of travel review cameras. It's a little too small for me. And the image quality isn't that much more amazing than a good smartphone. So it's kind of like, well, this is always with me, so, but the new one, crazy slow-mo stuff. 960 frames a second. That's a 2-second moment of action being stretched out for 80 seconds in 1080 quality in this little sucker. That is a nice differentiator. Sony is like, you know what? Here is why you might want this camera. And they are giving us good reasons. So also 4K. When I'm pointing at this, I'm pretending that it's the Mark IV. 4K video will be in here too, limited to 5 minutes at a time. They cannot, I think it would just heat up and melt in your hands like a little puddle of aluminumity. So that's interesting. And then the RX10 Mark II, which I haven't really talked about much. People, when I posted on Facebook, somebody asked me if I'm going to be reviewing it. I have limited amounts of time. I'd love to review more, but I also would love to do more teaching stuff too. So, we'll be balancing that. But let's, for instance, for a second, put this RX Mark II, which is it's a super zoom version of this. It will shoot 4K video for 29 minutes at a time and also do the slow-mo against Canon's new weird little thing. What's that called? The X10, XV10 or whatever. That is $2,500 versus Sony's RX Mark II, which is going to be $1,200, half the price. As far as I can tell, does everything and more. Do you know, you can't see this, but I'm holding that stupid Canon in my hand. The X, what is it? Somebody in the chat room, please tell me the X something. Because I don't think you remember.
But we got to move into RAW Doctor pretty soon.
I know. That it doesn't even shoot RAW. You can't get RAW files out of that. JPEG and then the video files. Canon. And then Sony comes along and says, here's the same thing for half the price. Oh, and you can have RAW files as well. Oh, and you can have crazy slow-mo as well. And Wi-Fi. So, yeah.
Yep.
And Wiki Wicklet says in the chat that at the press conference, I saw a reference to this, Sony was using Canon EF lenses with Metabones adapters, getting autofocus. Still a little slow there, but man, landscape work. You got access to the Canon lenses.
Yeah, that would be so awesome.
Got this camera.
Yeah. All right, XC10.
Right.
That was
the XC10. Yeah. Stupid Canon. XC10.
Okay, so we are going to move on
the XC10.
to RAW Doctor, and I don't think. Oops, not in case you missed it. RAW Doctor.
RAW Doctor.
So do you want to start, since we're gonna do one picture each?
We're gonna do one picture each, and we're both running. We don't want this to go too long. But I want to show a cool feature that actually isn't Lightroom, but it's Photoshop. And this is one of those places where it is really nice to have the Creative Cloud package or have access to both, because there are some things that Lightroom can't do. I've got this is from Max. Excuse me. That's a nice panning shot of an airplane about to take off, or maybe land. I don't know. And I wish that there was more room in front of the plane. That's my real own critique with this. I'm actually not going to work on it in Lightroom at all. I'm just going to show you something that you may or may not have been aware. I've already right-clicked on it and said, open up in Photoshop for me. So that's there. And there are a couple different ways to do this. First thing I always like to do is duplicate the background layer. That gives me an extra layer to work with, and sometimes I turn off the original background layer. And that way, if I really screw up, it's easy to just delete the layer. That's what I tell myself, at least. And now you have this ability here to edit and content-aware scale a layer. That brings up the little handles. So there is also here, basically transform, which is you can drag and warp it and all that. But with content-aware scale, you can, I'm just going to move this to the side. It intelligently looks at the image, tries to judge what could be stretched and what shouldn't be stretched, and then provides that for you. So I'm going to stretch this, and you can see how the plane is getting a little longer, but really not nearly as much as the rest of the image. You can see every once in a while the plane pops back just a little bit. So I drew it just a little past the edge, and I can bring it back. You know what? I say that's pretty good, but it's still not quite enough. So I could try doing that some more. But I want to show you one other thing. Let's just do it a little bit more. And Max is probably going, oh, the plane's perspectives are all out of whack. But it doesn't really. It looks pretty much the same to me as it originally did. Here we can, let's enter so it applies that transformation for a second here. And then let's go back to the, original image. There it is. And there it is there. And we can also do this fun thing here real quick. I'm really bad at trying to be quick. Go to difference and match up these two planes on top of each other to see how much did the plane itself change. It got a little longer. You can see its nose sticks out a little bit in the tail.
The wheels changed a lot.
Yeah. Max, I'd be interested to know from you if that is terrible. If it is, then here's your other option. And in this case, I am doing a bad job here. In this case, what we can do is we can select a chunk of this area in front of the plane. And we have this other tool that either works spectacularly, mind-bendingly well, or fails and is humorous. And that is Fill Content-Aware Fill. That simply looks at the content here and fills in the rest of it with something that tries to match. I'm going to click OK, and it's going to think for a moment or two and hopefully fill something in. I did a test run earlier, and you know what? It did what I consider to be a 90% job that with about 10% more work could fix nicely. It seems to be taking a little bit longer this time. So I'll just keep talking and filling the air. When do I get to tell people how I drop my phone in the water and whether it works or not?
You should probably save that for the after.
Oh, the after.
Yeah,
That's
the after show.
Too. Okay, we got two things for the after show. Oh my gosh.
Live after show. Yeah, this is taking forever.
Did I select about the same as I selected before? And it
looks like it's getting there. No?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Beach ball? Should we? Gosh, if only we had El Capitan. This would be so much faster.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
And it did not do a very good job.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think the blur level is different. So then I would go in, and we just wasted all the time waiting for it to go in. But you could work on doing a more smooth blur here. But honestly, I think a lot of people wouldn't notice. We got some stuff up here that needs to be fixed. It maybe
I don't
could
know.
Be cropped in. Is it bad to you?
It looks pretty sloppy to me.
Okay. Well, let's take this as a lesson. As I said, sometimes it works well and sometimes it doesn't.
You kind of just have to try it, and if it doesn't work...
Could have done a smaller amount, possibly, and it may have done a better job.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, well, we're going to move on to...
Oh, you didn't want to edit you have one image to edit.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Oh.
We're going to move on to the next image that we have.
Oopsie. This is one of Jeff's image.
Yeah.
From someplace out there in Wyoming area, I would suspect.
So this is a pretty cool landscape. And the first thing that I do when before I start to edit images is I like to look at my histogram and see, okay, where are my blacks, where are my whites, and how much flexibility do I have and latitude to make this brighter, darker, etc. So I'm seeing here that only these whites on the edges are, and this is a DNG image, so I think it actually might have already been edited. But so I'm seeing that at the very edges it's been cropped, and that's where my highlights are clipping, but there is detail in every other part of the image. So I am going to just crop out those edges right now as much as I possibly can. Okay. And the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to add sharpness by going to my detail panel and bringing this up to about 50 something, 58, and maybe even a little bit more. Now I'm going to add clarity. And that, as you can see, it really starts to define all of the detail. I'm going to increase my exposure just a little bit. And as I do that, I'm seeing that my whites, there's still just a little bit of white on the edge that I need to crop. But I am gonna bring back a little bit more of the detail in the clouds because I want the clouds to just have a little bit more detail. And then I'm gonna go to my tone curve, which is, again, if you guys have watched this before or you have the Lightroom videos and you've watched my tutorial video, you'll know that this is one of my favorite tools to set the black and white points.
And we talked about this before, you know, that it adds a little bit of contrast, but it's better than the contrast slider in many cases because it's not adding it wholesale over the whole image, making it look too crunchy or over contrasty. It is really adding it at the top and the bottom ends of your image.
Yeah, that's right. I'm gonna add a little bit of contrast and I'm going to increase the warmth of the image because it is a sunny day and the mountains, the hills back here look a little bit blue to me. And I'm going to add a little bit of green just to bring back some of the green saturation. And I want to make sure that my sky still looks pretty blue. I'm seeing that as I turn it, as I change the tint to green, it's starting to look a little bit faded. So actually I do want to bring back some of that sky. So I'm going to go to my hue, saturation, and luminance panel. And first I'm going to decrease the luminance of the blue, which is going to just make the sky a little bit darker.
That's basically reducing the brightness of that color.
And now I'm going to increase the blue saturation just to make the sky pop a little tiny bit.
This is probably the one place I see people overdo their editing more than almost anything else, and that's the sky.
Yeah, you have to be very subtle when you do this.
Keep it natural looking.
Now I want to add vibrance, and instead of saturation, because vibrance is going to pick up on all of the colors that are already present in the image, and it's just going to saturate those as opposed to just saturating and adding other colors, which is what saturation does. And I have a really good explanation of the difference between these two in our Lightroom editing video, which I believe is episode 2. And the very last thing that I'm going to do to this image is I'm going to clone this out right here. And I'm going to try heal first. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I could, potentially try to edit the tone curve even more just to give it a little bit more of a pop. It actually looks to me like these shadows don't look super deep, so I almost wonder if you used on-camera flash to just bring back some of those shadows closest to you. That's kind of what this looks like to me. So yeah, I'm just adding a little bit more contrast by creating a very subtle S curve. And I'm going to bring down my highlights again just to make sure that I retain detail in the clouds. And bring back a little bit of my shadows. Okay? And I think that's probably as far as I would take this. And let's just quickly look at what this picture looked like before and what it looks like now. Before and now. So pretty subtle, but
nice improvement.
Impactful.
That was much more successful than my plain stretching exercise.
I thought your stretching was successul. I didn't think your content-aware fill was super
I
successful.
just wanted to give people the idea that it could be done. We've been having some great feedback from folks who have purchased our Lightroom videos. And one of the things that folks have said is that there have been different people saying different things that I like, that kind of come together in this really nice moment. And that is, one, they're really glad they've been shooting RAW for many years, because now as they've really learned the power of this program, or any decent RAW editing program, they can go back to these images and make significant changes that they look a lot better. So this is a plug for our Lightroom series, but this is also just one, shoot RAW, and two, keep those special pictures around in RAW format, because there will be a future you that is likely much better at editing, either because you've bought our wonderful series on Lightroom, or you've just figured things out on your own piecemeal through all of these different tiring places out there on the internet. Mm-hmm. Were you listening early?
Okay. So next we're going to try to pull off, we're just going to skip the discussion for this week because I feel like we're running a little...
all the discussion was last week was, do we trust Google with our photos? And Apple's kind of making this deal of like, you're putting your photos up there and they're scanning them. And I tweeted out this week, or just the other day, I went out and I took all these pictures yesterday morning, came back, uploaded my favorite ones to Google. And a few minutes later, I typed in newt because I'd taken some pictures of red Fs, which are newts. There they were. It already did recognition on these images and they were searchable for me. That's amazing. And Giuseppe's point was you're paying one way or the other, because I said you could do SmugMug or Zenfolio. You pay them cash. You pay Google some of your privacy so that they have the ability to do this machine learning language. I thought that was a worthwhile comment repeating. And now we can move on to reader discussions.
Yep. So that would be on the rundown. First question. So we have actually a Facebook question first. Mm-hmm. This is from Brett Gerards. Maybe a quick question for tonight's show. With the recent release of the 5DS and R and the rumors of a 5D Mark IV announced maybe in the fourth quarter of 2015, would you still recommend getting a Mark III at this point in time for the enthusiast Canon shooter?
It's important that you said, Brecht, that you said enthusiast Canon shooter, because if you've already bought into the Canon line, yeah. Otherwise, as we were just gushing over this new Sony A7R, the A7 Mark II that's already out that we liked, the A7S that's coming, those offer some fantastic results, and also, as it was mentioned, they can be used with Canon glass. But if you want to stay within it with a Canon DSLR, I mean, it depends on what you want. I haven't had my hands on the 5DS or SR yet. Tony has, Tony Northrup. He's got some good videos about those out. Quality out of them looks fantastic. Dynamic range is improved too. Low light performance is improved somewhat. But they're expensive. And I feel like they're fairly niche. I say it in all three different ways so that there'll be comments from different people saying I'm saying it wrong each of those three ways. So I think the 5D Mark IV is going to be much more of a jack-of-all-trades camera like the 5D Mark III has, and a nice all-around camera. I still love the feel of the camera in the hand. The quality is still very good. Sure, the dynamic range isn't as good, blah, blah, blah. So what's my answer?
You should get a Sony.
Wow. What are you shooting with now? How long can you wait? The 5D Mark III is going to continue to come down, slow, steady price decrease, and offers a very nice all-around camera for many people's needs. Battery life is fantastic. We can usually shoot a whole series-long wedding on one battery. That's a nice thing.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're going to do a lot of serious landscapes, the 5DS, 5DSR. Yeah.
Okay. KDO888 wants to know. She has a 430EX Mark II and wants a Yongnuo 600EX RT to use off camera. Which trigger does she need? Can she fire 430 off camera without an external trigger but not have the in-camera flash go off?
Yeah, so this I actually answered her question. We were supposed to answer it last week. We missed that, and I answered her personally on the page. But I wanted to talk about this briefly because we're in this bit of an incompatible, not an incompatible world, but we seem to be transitioning somewhat from the optical flash. This is a 430EX original. Let's take a couple of different pieces to this. I'm just going to breeze over some of this answer. I had to research some of it to make sure I knew what I was saying. The Yongnuo 600 can fire things optically or wirelessly. Now, what you have to be careful about when we're talking about, Canon uses the term wireless flash, but they mean optically wireless, not radio. So that's how we got the RT in these names for the radio trigger or radio transmission. So 430EX2, this is a T6S, but let's pretend it's 70D. First, you can fire these flashes off camera using the onboard flash, and in such a way that onboard flash only fires to trigger those, so it doesn't impact your exposure. Disclaimer: it does in extreme circumstances. It could be seen as a reflection in some cases, or it could change the exposure slightly. But in normal shooting conditions, that flash isn't seen when the picture's taken. But whatever flash that happens will. We found reliance on optical transmission to be pretty flaky. Especially, flaky's not the right word. Not very reliable, especially in bright light. It can get washed out. Remember, we've tried a long time ago, we tried to use optical triggers to do some outside portraits.
Mm-hmm. We tried, yes, we tried this to do some outside portraits, and it's not super powerful.
But it's not, it gets lost sometimes. It doesn't even happen. Radio transmissions are much more reliable and will work. So, gosh, the easy thing to do, just buy two 600s. Then
the thing is, though, Tony just posted on the chat. He dropped his recently, and it broke.
So you don't think, Tony Lawrence? So you don't think that the 600 would survive a fall?
Oh, I think it would. I think they're built to be tough.
So you've just gotten into a discussion of a 600 Canon versus 600 Yongnuo.
Right. So you have to be really careful with it. So I guess what I'm trying to say...
You can buy 4 of these for the price of this.
Right. But which 4 are going to last longer? Or which is going to last longer?
I consider myself somewhat of an environmentalist, and I don't like, unnecessary, wasteful stuff, but golly, the value of this feels better. You feel like you pay a lot of Canon tax here. I think, I'm going to do a review side by side, so we don't want to get too much into it. That wasn't really what the point of this discussion was.
Certainly, but I think it's an important point to make, because if you're considering buying this and they look almost identical, seriously, they look almost identical, and you're considering the options and you have no idea which one to get, one of the things to consider between these two is that the Yongnuo is not very well built. It's super cheap. You get a lot of value for the money. But, you can probably expect to replace it if you're going to be using it a lot pretty soon. I've dropped these before. They've fallen on the ground from, from a significant height, and they've been fine. And that's not to say that if they, maybe have just been lucky, but...
I have to say, this 600 feels pretty good. I have other Yongnuos. Yes, the little rubber bit fell off right away, but I could put that back on. Also, funny enough, the select set text on the back rotates with the dial. On the Canons, it stays, horizontal. That wasn't really the point of this discussion, though. The point was, how to get the 430 to fire off camera with an external trigger, but kind of make yourself future-proof with the 600. And there's not a good, easy, cheap way because the 430 is only optical unless you buy one of these little Yongnuo triggers. And
you put the flash on the Yongnuo?
But these don't talk directly to the 600 radio, only optically. So... That's why I think, or you could go with the Yongnuo, this is not it, but Yongnuo makes a radio transmitter that looks similar to this, but only transmits radio, not optically. So then you can't fire the 430. See how it's kind of messy right now? And I really think if you just bought 2 of these, you'd be good. Christina thinks you should buy 2 of these.
No, that's not what
late.
No. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
I just wanted to point out, like, I just feel like you're very much like, oh, this is so awesome and it's so cheap and you're paying like for nothing. You know, you're not paying for much more except for like just the tax if you buy a Canon. And I don't think that Canon's thing is perfect either. I mean, the channels get confused sometimes and they're not totally reliable sometimes. Like sometimes we have trouble with them, but I am confident bringing them to a wedding knowing that they will work most of the time and that if I drop it, it's not the end of the world. So, but anyway, yeah. The other option is you could just get 2 of these, and I know it would.
That's what I said.
Huh? Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh. All right. Well.
And we end up on the same page. Okay. Craig would tell you. Craig says yes. How can you make lightning happen? I don't know what you mean, Craig. Although in the little review of this thing, I showed people how the lightning trigger works by flashing the flash, and that made it trigger the camera. What I haven't tested though is, does it catch that exposure? Does it catch the bright of the flash? I don't know. I think there's enough lightning flash that there's time for it to catch. That's what I hope. Roger read in amateur photography that it's normal, quote unquote normal, to shoot with the mirror locked up with a telephoto lens so as to avoid vibration from the mechanism. So what's the score? I have never heard that, Roger. You're shooting with a telephoto lens, you are moving, you're using image stabilization. I don't believe that you are going to negatively impact your images from the mirror slap. Also, if the mirror is up, you can't see through the viewfinder. You can only see through the LCD on the back, and your shooting conditions are slower, and you got a little bit of lag on that. So there's no way you're going to be hitting birds with any kind of accuracy with the viewfinder. Never heard that. For those who don't know, and this was a question that came up this week from somebody, mirror lockup is a feature that it's one of the few kind of features that Canon offers on the low end that Nikon doesn't. It lets you lock the mirror up shortly before you take a picture. The reason being, usually on longer exposures, not telephoto, longer exposures, the mirror moving up vibrates the camera in there just a little bit. And on longer exposures, letting it flip up and those vibrations die out before you take a picture can help. The question, the way it came out this week, was somebody said on live view, when I'm in live view, I never hear the mirror lockup happen. That's because live view, the mirror's already up. And honestly, most of these days when I shoot longer exposures now, I'm already in live view. And because speed isn't of the essence. I'm not trying to capture something. I'm carefully setting it up, and live view is comfortable. I can look down at it, especially with an articulating screen. And then I still use 2-second timer if I don't have a remote or something, so that I can say, let all the vibrations die out. So it takes a nice picture. Roger, I want you to follow up on that. Show me where you read that, and I'd be curious. I could be wrong, but I've just never heard anybody doing that. And again, I don't know how you can't see through the viewfinder when the mirror's locked up. So Craig wants to know the best way to photograph police. That's a good question. I think there's been some resources recently about that, because we're kind of in this, there's some police groups out there feeling quite put upon, and there are some people feeling that they need to be documented much better. I'd say the first answer is as respectfully as possible. But as far as I know, in this country, in all states, you do have the right to photograph police in their actions. From a distance with a telephoto lens, so you're not right up in their face. But again, respectful is the only good answer I can give you at this time.
Right.
Yeah. And also just make sure you are aware of your local municipalities, the local laws. Make sure you know them.
James Young wants to know, can I just come and help out with your photo shoots as an intern to support you both? Sure. Come over to Vermont. Come help us make some videos.
Where are you, James? Send me a message. Roger says we need a Patreon badge, or better still, where's the mugs? I know.
Yeah.
budget feels really tight right now, and
Well, it's not just that. It's
I don't
just the
want to order
logistics.
like 60 mugs, and then like there's 15 of you that are like mugs, and then I
Yeah.
got 45 mugs, and I'm like, I paid $300 for these. Should just do it though. All right, that's all we're gonna say. Duarte says, any thoughts on the new Canon 50 f1.8? Duarte, did you watch my review? It's a nice lens.
Go watch the
It's
review.
not a huge, difference from the previous one, but it's a nice lens. Inju George wants us to explain the Canon 70 to 200 field of depth when it's in 70 or 200 focal lengths. Well, this is what you need to do. The first, depth of field calculator is your friend. Google that, and the first option that comes up is a nice depth of field calculator. Maybe should we show it, or should we just talk about it?
What are we talking about?
That's fine. Depth of field. Basically, the longer your focal length at the same aperture, the shallower your depth of field. So, say for instance, off the top of my head, 70 millimeters and f2.8 probably gives you an area that's in focus of like, well, it depends on how far away your subject is. Let's say your subject is 15 feet away. Probably gives you, an area of focus that's like 2-3 feet. As you zoom, that area of focus, here's the beginning of the area of focus, here's the end of the area of focus, it narrows the longer your focal length. And so as you get out to 200, keeping your subject at the same distance from you, so they're going to be filling up much more of the frame, or smaller, only it's going to be a head shot as opposed to a whole torso shot, that depth of field is going to be much narrower. Also, you're going to get a better perspective of them and have more pleasing look in most of the time. Not necessarily all the way out at 200, but the further you go, usually the nicer a person's looks. How focal length affects perspective. I did a video on that a while ago. It hasn't gotten nearly as many views as it should. I think it's because the thumbnail picture is me just kind of standing there kind of cold and grumpy. We need to put a better thumbnail on that. That makes a big difference in views. Any of you out there know that. So, Roy's typing something right now.
Me
so this would be a
too.
good time to thank Roy for his work, hard work, and support.
Roy is awesome. He's always watching the chat, not only posting questions for us, but also answering all of your questions in the chat. He also posts interesting stories for us to talk about, and he also is a contributor to our blog. He writes some really cool original articles. You should go check out some of his articles. He's done a comparison on this in the same vein as the 51.8. He compared the old Nifty 50, the old Canon Nifty 50, with the young Nuo f1.8. Did a comparison of that.
Oh, somebody else did that.
I thought it was Roy who wrote that.
No.
Oh, all right.
He's done other great things.
Yeah.
That have brought people to the site. Can you share my screen for a minute?
Sure. So he's just suggested this depth of field
somebody
calculator.
else showed me this a while ago. This is really well done, and this is kind of what I was talking about when I was talking about putting the VR helmet on. Here we say, let's say that you are shooting with a 70 millimeter lens, f2.8, on a full frame. Let's do crop, because that's more likely. HAASPC Canon. There we go. So that's what your view would look like if your subject was 3 meters away. There you go, all you folks outside North America or outside the US. I'm helping you with your metrics. I saw somebody the other day wanted to move us into the metric system. That would be so nice if we all were doing that. So your depth of field, well, you can see, actually this one doesn't tell you, does it? It doesn't tell you, oh yeah, it does down here. In front of the subject 9 centimeters, behind the subject 9.6 centimeters. So your depth, this subject is way too close. Let's say they're out here at 5, so we can kind of see, there we go. See these lines down here at the bottom? That shows you the area in focus. If the red line is our point of focus, we have the area before and after that point that's in focus, referred to as the circle of confusion, helpfully enough. So that's at 7D. Let's zoom to 200, and we can also see the picture to the top right here. Let's zoom to 200, and we can see that, there we go. And notice how that area of focus gets much smaller. And also, we can see the background behind her is much more blurred. Let's go back to 70 for a second. It's a little slow to drag. Maybe. Shockwave flash has crashed. There it is. So, there is the difference between 70 and 200 at f2.8. F4 you could do as well. So go, this place is great. dofsimulator.net/en. I think you're doing English. Thanks for sending that along, Roy, and folks should check it out.
Yeah.
You start to, as you shoot more and more, you start to have an idea in your head of, what your depth of field is going to look like at different distances. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that was it for questions.
That's right.
And I guess we should
wrap it up and say thanks so much for watching the live show, folks. If you want to stick around for a few minutes, I'll do my best for an English accent. Thank God no one's going to be recording that.
Don't forget about the Instagram challenge for this coming week. It's
Lines.
#PRTV_lines. And if you want to follow us on Instagram, Toby will be reminding you periodically about the challenge. Our usernames are on the screen. Mine is Christina Bernales, and yours is
Correct, Toby.
Yep. And if you want to keep up with news on the blog, news articles, rumors, things like that, subscribe to the YouTube channel and log on to photorec.tv. And if you enjoyed this broadcast, please, please, please give it a thumbs up.
Oh, right. We got to remember to tell people that earlier.
Yes, we keep forgetting. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. Goodbye.
Goodbye.